So thank you all for being here. My name's Shane. I'm here part of the Lighthouse team, and this is Startup Grind. It's a fireside chat, and I want to introduce you to Pram, who will take us the rest of the way. Thank you, Pram.
Thank you very much, Shane, and welcome to Startup Grind here in Bali, which we are in the Lighthouse Studios, a beautiful studios that are kindly hosting us. And I also want to say hi to everybody tuning in online to our Startup Grind community. I believe that we have a co-host party in Thailand that are watching this all together. So hello to Thailand and everybody else tuning in or watching this recording. We gathered here to have an amazing guest speaker, Andrew Salony, who's a student of radiant prosperity, visionary entrepreneur, and philanthropist, I would say. So it's really great honor to have him around. And I'm just going to give you a brief intro about Startup Grind and who have here been before to Startup Grind event. Okay, and the first time Startup Grind event? That's great. It's always good to see new faces. So Startup Grind is the world's largest community of entrepreneurs. We started probably about now 13, 14 years ago. And we're a community of startups, founders, investors, innovators. And we have three base values that are to help others, then yourself, make friends, not contacts, and give first, then take. So when you network after this event, just try to embody those values and you'll see that people really appreciate that. And we grew so fast, so much, that we are now the largest. We are in 700 cities. We have over 5 million entrepreneurs in the platform, like yourself, who are watching or here in the audience. And we continue to bring people to share education and then also support startups. So tonight we're going to also have, after our talk, our local startups they're going to present, because we like supporting local ecosystem of startups. We have many partners here in the ecosystem, and if you want to follow all our newsletters and then tune into our WhatsApp group and follow us on social media, you can just scan these QR codes that are on the screen, and also see what's happening, see the previous photos and footages of previous amazing speakers that we had. You can see on the photos it's quite vibrant community. And also thanks to all our partners that you can see on the screen that just create this community more vibrant and live. So next month we celebrate women across the planet, and we're going to be hosting SG Women's Month. It's going to be all female panels, so make sure to check that out. And now it gives me a great pleasure and honor to introduce my good friend and brother, Andrew Salony. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Pram.
Yes.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, please. A big round of applause. I just want to say again, happy belated birthday. You turned 72 a few weeks ago, and you look so radiant. And I just wanted to learn, what's the secret of longevity for one student of radiant prosperity that you are?
Yeah, it's radiant prosperity is the core. It has been the core of my journey, is connecting to and understanding the energetic essence of oneself, that center within oneself where you feel so deeply connected to who you are, to the universe, to your purpose for being here.
Beautiful. And I guess you grew up in 60s, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, so you have that essence imprinted in you growing up in in hippie age, going to Woodstock, I believe, yeah?
Yes,
and
I did.
experiencing LSD and then all the jazz that was legal back then, and you know, seeing amazing concert, witnessing amazing entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs doing amazing things. Can you maybe share some of that experience with you, how that was imprinted into what you just said?
Well, I think it's first important to, and like the 50s in America, it was you know, this idea of being an American and making the world a wonderful place, and America being a wonderful place. And I believed in the American dream.
American dream, yeah.
I grew up believing in the American dream. And then the 60s came. And there were people like Bob Dylan and the Beatles, and there were people that were speaking about things that made me start to think about life. And at 16 years old, I was at Woodstock, and I was on psychedelics. I was experimenting with psychedelics, and this gentleman came on stage. His name was Swami Satchidananda. And he was the most radiant being I had ever seen. I mean, literally was shining so much light. And I looked at him and I went, wow, that man knows something. There's something there that I'm not going to find in the American dream. And when I talk about the American dream meaning you go to the Ivy League schools and you go on to business and you go on to create all of these things. And I looked at it and I just said, wow, there's something really, really special here. And it struck me. And it struck me so deeply that all of a sudden I said, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I mean, this kind of changed everything. And it set me on a journey. It set me on a journey to find out what was happening inside of myself, what was going on inside of me, that I could come to understand, you know, who I was, why I was here, and how I could contribute to being a productive human being.
And you had an incredible journey to actually go into monastic life, becoming a monk. And can you tell us how was that experience and how it changed your mindset that affected how you created and worked on conscious businesses later?
It started everything over. Everything had to have a new beginning. Everything had to have a meaning. And I thought, if I'm going to find my place in the world, I have to figure out who I am. And how am I connected? What am I connected to? What is meaningful to me? And how am I going to find my way to make a contribution as a human being? And it just set me on a journey that said I've got to discover myself, and in the process of discovering myself, perhaps I can then find a way that I can provide value and service to the world. So it became an inner search.
Beautiful. So you had like about 7 years of being a monk, finding your inner search, finding yourself, and then going into adventures in 70s, working in the music industry, conscious entrepreneurship, creating some of the, I think one of the largest organic grocery networks in America, is that right?
Well, we had a monastic community of 350 people, and we had to support ourselves. And we thought, when people start eating, good food, they start acting differently. You know, eat well, take care of yourself. You start to become more conscious about what you're doing. So we decided that the best way to serve other people was to create organic health food stores and restaurants. And so we helped farmers the notion, start to nourish yourself, start to eat well, and you start to feel who you are and what's important to you. And we found that there was a great movement in that. People were interested in actually eating natural foods. And it created a movement. Natural food stores, natural food restaurants, and it created a community of people, you know, working together, thinking about the earth, thinking about how they participated with the earth, how they lived in harmony with the earth. And that was what the whole movement was meant to be, was to create a community of people living, growing food, living consciously, living healthy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you're still working on that field. I believe you're one of the founding investors in The Alchemy, which is a beautiful restaurant place, yoga space, also Seeds of Life, many other great vegan restaurants.
Yeah,
and
I was starting out in the 70s. I was looking at graduate students from the University of California, the biodynamic gardening, who studied organic farming and organic farming methods, and we were training farmers how to grow organically. And that was important in America. And it grew. And it grew very, very fast, and it turned into a whole movement of markets and restaurants and bakeries and juice factories and the whole organic movement, you know, that occurred. And so that is what we felt was the best way that we could kind of make money to support people, to help them start to nourish themselves.
that's a beautiful way, just to create that balance with the nature, permaculture, organic, and then eat healthy. So we can come into alignment and be aligned with ourselves. And then that brings me to your next chapter in your life, which after doing that in the early 80s, you invented something incredible, some technology that's changed how we communicate, how we are.
No, I didn't invent.
You brought it into reality.
Well, I read a white paper from Bell Labs on something called cellular mobile technology. And I went, wow, this is going to change the world. This is going to change the way we communicate. It's going to change the way we educate. It's going to, you know, these mobile devices. I saw the future in it. And I said, I think this is something that the world is ready for. And so when I left the monastery, I said, I'm going to focus my attention in this direction, and I gathered a group of people that were interested in these kinds of things, and we built one of the first mobile telephone networks in America.
That's really amazing. So, we basically, what you guys did is really transform way how we communicate. They allowed the network to exist, and then successfully exited that company, and then moved on, I guess, to your next chapter. So in 90s, you raised like really amazing amount of money. You went to the Wall Street, New York. You were living that American dream, and then I believe raised about $5 billion in scaling the networks and working with hedge funds.
Well,
can you share something about that?
Yeah,
experience?
well, cellular telephones became the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it was time.
Everybody had them, and so the telephones were like cars on a road. You can only have so many cars on a road before you need a bigger road. Mm-hmm. And so I went into spectrum, cellular, radio telephone spectrum, which is what allows cellular telephones to work. And we raised a lot of money, and we acquired the largest portfolio of radio telephone spectrum in the United States of America. And that enabled the awakening, or the acceptance of mobile telephony that we have today.
So you created that road for the cars to be driven, and so there were more mobile phones on the network. You made the network really powerful and
yes,
yeah, and scalable, which is great. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, it's really important to have the phones. We can't imagine now what it was back then when this technology did not exist, and how it's almost like it is the last century, but it's really looks like far away. And especially it's like, I don't want to compare things, but if we look at the AI, where we at now with the AI, it's like we're entering this age. It's already been here, a lot of people using AI, and we see what's possible. And you've been working with AI and working in some in academia and incubators around AI, really exploring the possibilities of it. And maybe can you share some light on what are the
AI?
On AI, and then where's that taking us?
The way I look at AI is, does anybody know what the Akashic Records is? Akashic Records? Have you heard of the Akashic Records?
Good.
So the Akashic Records is the recording of everything that ever is. It is the knowledge of everything that has ever existed. It's the ancient Hindus, the ancient seers. It was only the wise ones that had access to the Akashic Records. But AI is like the Akashic Records. AI is it's the recording of everything that is. And so we have access to it. We now have access to everything that is. And it's changing. It's absolutely changing everything. In the past, only seers could see it. They could only the great yogis or the great seers or the great avatars had access to it. But now everybody has access to all the information. Everything that ever was and is available to us. And that is radically changing everything that we know about life and what's available to us.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, isn't it, to have this power, like great seers and yogis of the old, just to be able to know everything, or download anything, or recreate anything in a matter of seconds. Yeah. And you guys have been working on an incubator, really creating some amazing things in terms of using this technology for good, as like in a conscious way, because it can also be used in many different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It's gonna take the other people's jobs, and yeah.
well, it's consciousness. It's our awareness that is going to save us. It's not technology. Technology will only take us faster to our own demise if we don't guide it. And so it's the evolution of consciousness that is the most important thing that we're addressing in the realms of AI is how are we using this tool? That is the deep question. We're doing some experiments in the University of San Diego. There's a project where they're studying empathy. And how can we include empathy into AI? I mean, how does the concept, the ideas of being empathetic work with AI?
That's beautiful. So we're trying to kind of humanize the AI a bit more, to bring more sense, more consciousness to it. Yeah, because AI is what we train it to be, and it's super important to find the ways of expanding consciousness in these times. And I feel like a lot of things globally are happening in these ways. There's like a lot of eco-villages, organic farms, more vegan food, healthy food. Meditation is again becoming more popular because there's a burnout and stress. And I feel that there is this renaissance of psychedelics that's happening. And I've seen very interesting things, and I know you've been involved in some clinical trials, and some companies that are really developing some interesting molecules that are also using AI to understand how it can affect human consciousness for better.
Yes, well, psychedelics are a very, very interesting path. We think about the path of humanity, the direction that we're moving in. I believe that psychedelics represent an opportunity for awakening humanity. If humanity has a deep, deep need to embrace empathy. It's empathy. We need to develop empathy. And psychedelics deeply, deeply awakens empathy. And it also awakens our connection to the earth, to plants. If people are feeling, and if people feel connected to plants, to earth, to the planet, that deep sense of connection, I believe, is what it's going to require to allow us to evolve and move forward. And psychedelics plays a key role in that, because it opens our heart and it connects us to nature.
So what you're saying, you're giving psychedelics to AI to have more empathy, is that right? Good.
Basically, you give psychedelics to the software developers.
Yeah.
Building AI.
Well, there is this notion that, you know, even Steve Jobs, who also was raised in 60s, got experience with LSD and came up with the idea about the apple and so the future, and went again to India to find his guru Maharaji, and a lot of the stories, a lot of the problems, I believe, that are of this earth, of this mind, can only be solved, like Einstein said, out of that mind, out of that concept, out of that creation. And I believe, yeah, when we look things with the empathy, a lot of parts of us, a lot of people in relationship, and especially in conscious businesses where empathy is taking a lot of place in a workspace, in a corporate environment, in corporate well-being, is that people are trying to bring empathy and somehow increases the productivity as well, increases the talent retention rate, meaning that talent wants to stay and they don't want to go for a next job who is better paid, but they find really fulfillment and kind of sense of joy there, sense of belonging. And it's I guess the path of raising consciousness and expanding consciousness is one way to get through the empathy and feeling more connected, as you said.
Well, if we look at sustainability and actually regeneration, if that becomes the fundamental objective, if our fundamental objective is to be sustainable, I mean, how do 7.5 billion people live sustainably, you know, on the planet? Is this a sustainable experience? How do we live sustainably? And so, what if sustainability becomes the prerequisite? What if it becomes the looking glass? What if everything that we do, we say, is this sustainable? And if it isn't, so it's a whole new value system. The whole value system has to be built around sustainability. If it brings us closer to sustainability, it's valuable. If it takes us further away from sustainability, there's no value. And so the whole value system has to be built around sustainability.
Yeah, and you also mentioned a very important word, which is regenerative. And not many people understand that word, but for me, if we look at like permaculture, is very regenerative, because you don't need to grow organically, you don't need to put pesticides, and you don't need to kind of work around, because I think in regeneration of our lives, if you go against the nature, you got to put a lot of energy. And where it happens organically is like if you create an ecosystem that works in line with the nature, you don't have to do anything. Permaculture it can be implemented into businesses and the world, the same concept of beautiful sacred geometries, Fibonacci sequences, and things like how nature works. And I found it fascinating, the beauty and simplicity of just putting things in the action which are regenerative and sustainable. And we are here to learn and implement quite a lot to change the complete systems, aren't we? Yeah. Because systems are currently not built to support almost 8 billion people.
When we think about it, I mean, almost every major system that we have. Our economic systems are every system, the way in which we as human beings process, we have to look at it and say, is this a sustainable path, for us? When we start to make sustainability the focal point of our value system, everything changes. Everything changes. It's the unification that we need. It's wherever you are on the planet, the sustainability factor is what can unify us.
Wow.
So it's a collective direction, it's an individual direction. We have to say is how sustainable is who I am, what I do, what I'm trying to be, what I'm trying to become. Is this something that is sustainable, and can it regenerate?
Mm-hmm. Those are great core values to have and to implement. And I know that you've been mentoring a lot of people on these topics, just to become more sustainable and regenerative, but also start from themselves, yeah? Start from the core, and then really feel empathy for why we are doing that, yeah? Why we are connected to the Mother Earth and then the nature, and genuinely wanted to be more regenerative and understanding the impact of it, yeah? That can actually save the humanity and then make it more scalable, or at least, manage to survive on the planet with like immense growth of population that's growing in
Yeah,
front.
well, it starts with each one of us in feeling connected, to our own core, to our own essence. This notion that who I am, what I am, and what I need comes from me. It's not something that I need to take from somebody else. It's something that needs to come from me. Oftentimes, when you talk about people that I mentor, it's this notion of moving deck chairs. If this is in place, and this is in place, and this is in place, and this is in place, then my life is going to, when this happens, 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 then everything will happen. But what about the core? Where's the thrust? It all starts from this core radiance of just making something happen from you, not depending on something else to happen. It comes, you are the core, you are the energy, you are the magnet that makes it all begin to happen. That's the nature of it is this sense of self-generation. Being who you are, being authentic with who you are, let that authenticity create a value system. That what you authentically have to offer to somebody else is valuable to them. So valuable to them that they respond to you.
It mirrors back. That authenticity is so valued, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, being authentic with people, even in the companies where that authentic culture is present, it feels like people are working for for a greater mission than just like getting into the next quarter and then making that numbers right. Yeah, getting that chart up. It's like something beyond that. We go through this cycle of life on and on, again and again. And it just, when we bring in that authenticity, like a lot of people feel that, and it's really important. That's why in Startup Grind we like these values that creates really authentic relationship to make friends, not contacts, not just to pitch, but really be genuinely curious and you know, supporting others, just showing that empathic approach to giving first, and just always being your true self. And then kind of I know we all grew up in different families, in wars and things, in challenging times, and we have imprints of what happened to us in our childhood, and we bring those things as our kind of adults versions, and sometimes it's hard to be authentic. And I really honor people who are authentic, and I always like to express and then work more with authenticity, and also be welcomed when I share authentically, and that's really, really beautiful core of friendship, of relationship in business as well. And I found that most interesting with investors. And like, funny enough, investors, they don't invest in businesses at the end. They invest in people, and they see something that's, it's hard to put in numbers. Some people call it like human capital. It's like, how authentic are you? Are you authentic that you can go and win with that product, with that vision? Because a lot of things open up when we are authentic with ourselves and with others. Kind of, for me, feels like it's a co-creation. It's just, you co-create with life. Like, you had beautifully saw a future, a vision of that cellular network. Because you were authentic, you were meditating, and you were going through this so clearly that it's like was logical. And there we go. Now we have the mobile phones with supported networks. This is what it brings. It clears out the fog, yeah?
Yes.
And we understand where this world is going. Is it going to be sustainable or not? What's really important to work on? And that's, I believe, where a generative approach and an urgency of that comes.
When authenticity and core radiance, now we're talking about these foundational components, where your radiance comes from your authenticity, and that is, and I really believe that is going to be that is going to be the foundation, I believe, of a new beginning for humanity. Is what if we value authenticity above all things? I mean, why would we even consider anything if it wasn't authentic? I mean, how deep, how real is it for you? How committed are you? How authentic is your interest, your commitment to this? I mean, really getting deeply into the authenticity of who you are, what it is that you believe in, and you hit it. I mean, as an investor, for me, I mean, I get pitched day after day after day, endless things. What I look for is, how authentic is this? How much does this person really believe in what is this just the new thing that they're onto, and if that doesn't work, they're on to the next one? Or is this who they are? This is who they are, and this is what they're going to do no matter what, because it's who they are. It's what they are. It's that level of authenticity that we're looking for.
Yeah, and it's also, there's like, I found it's related to true passion. You know, when someone really wants to do something authentically, there is this like strength, that passion that aha moment, like you had an aha moment, wow, this is going to be future of communication, education. It's something that get us through the pathway, really rocky pathway of entrepreneurship. And I've started several businesses in my life, and I thought it's going to be hard, and it was harder than I thought. So it's not an easy road to grow, you know. But with that authenticity, is like gives us what you said, like real purpose,
Yes.
real strength to get. And I think that's what you're saying. Investors see that. They saw, and you saw that in many people who pitch you, yeah, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then yet you invest in some really amazing companies that had fantastic outcomes, not only revenue but impact. You know, I've eaten in a lot of these restaurants and places like Alchemy and Seas of Life in Ubud and in Lovato, where you invested and brought some amazing approach to organic food and beautiful vegan recipes. Are really feeling that passion there, you know, really feeling good after eating and feeling the good vibes there with the program and everything. It's good to also see that impact.
Yeah.
Apart from the return that you get, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, authenticity it's the easiest thing in the world, because you just have to be yourself. I mean, it's exhausting trying to be something else other than what you are. But your pure genius is who you authentically are. And when you just relax into that and become that, there's so much power. There is so much power in that, and you can feel it when somebody's there, because it's a magnetic force. You're drawn to it.
And you also draw others to you. That's the real essence of the radiances, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I started out on a path, you know, believing that I needed to. I grew up in America, and in America you go to an Ivy League school and you become, you get your degree and you become a lawyer and you do, and I did none of that. I decided, well, no, I'm not going to do. I walked away, you know, from that, and yet I have been relatively successful.
That's a modest thing to say. Okay.
Just being authentic. Just really investing in my authenticity, in something that I believe in. And it becomes a power. Your belief in yourself is a power that other people will then believe in. It's enthusiasm. You know, the other night we were talking about the elements. You know, what is it? What creates a core radiance? You know, in an individual. You become incredibly efficient, very efficient in what you do. You understand what it is that needs to get done, and you do it very efficiently and effectively. And you do it enthusiastically. There's an energy about the way you do something that builds enthusiasm. And then you add some flair to it. Create some magic to what you do. Make it exciting.
Oh yeah.
Create some pizzazz. And then be flexible. Flexible, because flexibility is so important. The thing, we need to be relevant. if we're not relevant to each other, if what I have to offer you isn't relevant to you, it doesn't mean anything. So the only way that you become relevant is by really listening to somebody. Really understand, what is it that somebody needs? What is it that they want? What is it that they desire? What do they need? And offer that in a relevant way that means something for them. You create relevancy. And that's how I built all of my companies. And that's the advice that I give all the companies that I help build. Be relevant. You have an idea? Great. Who is it relevant? Who finds relevance in what it is that you're doing? It's great that you find relevance in it, but do other people find relevance? How do you take what you're passionate about and make it relevant to somebody else? So relevant that it's meaningful for them, that they have your attention, that they want what you have, that they're willing to give you what they have to get what you're offering them. Relevancy. Always be relevant. And as long as you are relevant, you will be successful. So that's why I call your core radiance is your relevancy. Your ability to be able to understand what is it that somebody needs, and am I meeting it? And am I giving it to them? Am I being relevant for them? Do that as an individual, do it as a company.
Thank you for sharing that. Some fantastic feedback for your personal growth and work. And now I would just like to check if there are any maybe questions from the audience, if anybody wants to ask. Yeah, sure. Could you please stand up, say who you are, and then the mic is coming to you.
My name is Benjamin. I was really pleased to hear your talk about sustainability and how it's fundamental and how it is about the way we live, our values, how we embody that sustainable change the world desperately needs.
Working on that field for... yes, that's a difference. Could you hear me before?
Yes.
Yes? I've been working on that field for now 7 years, and very often what investors look at is technological solutions. Solutions that are out there that don't really challenge the unsustainable status quo that you were describing. How can we help change that paradigm? And what I mean by that is having people investing in the expansion of our human consciousness. I think the sustainability challenge that we face is also stemming from a lack of consciousness. How do we get investors, people who have leverage in political power or economic power or institutional power to actually invest in us humans and the expansion of our consciousness, so that we can realize that we are one with nature, we are all interconnected, and what we need is a new way of life. So how do we get that change? Because there's so much invested in techs and solutions out there, and so little in the field of sustainability is invested in solution in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Well, it is just that. It's consciousness itself. Conscious people invest consciously. Conscious companies invest consciously. So it begins at home. I mean, how do we become the most conscious being we can be? How do we be so present, so relevant? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what consciousness is. Consciousness is being conscious of being of relevancy. And it's happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, so I'm involved in in a fund with a group of people that have funds, and they've now created a fund for conscious AI. It's how do we use, AI consciously to serve where it is that we're going. If AI is access to all information, then what is the consciousness? How do we use our consciousness to use that information to bring us to a higher place collectively? I mean, it's happening. There are funds, there are individuals, there are people. I see it every day. It's growing, and it's just as you said. How do we do it? We do it by becoming aware, and by putting our attention and our resources to what we believe in.
Cool. Does that answer your question, Benjamin?
Yes.
Great. Do we have any other questions in the room? Yes, please. One here. If you can maybe stand up, say your name and the question, please. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak up, and thanks for what you are sharing. It's very profound and deep. Can feel it. I think everybody feel it. So I don't even really know what is my question, but it will come. I have a retreat center here in Bali. I'm French, by the way. I'm here since 5 years, and now I have my own retreat center. And I start to see what kind of people I attract there. And there is more and more entrepreneur basically coming. And I was trying to find what can be relevant into my retreat center. What can I really offer to them? And I start to understand with your conversation that what is relevant is, consciousness, but also connection with the deeper self and with some sort of wisdom. But there are so many layers to peel out before gaining access to this higher form of intelligence. And I'm reaching a point where I have to do my marketing about that. Because for me, it's very important to help an entrepreneur to give more impact. But the only way to do that is to know yourself and to know who you are, etc., etc. So I was wondering, my question actually is, what can be my message out there to attract entrepreneurs who are seeking this wisdom, this peace that is necessary for them to access and to tap into this highest form of consciousness? How to relax, how to slow down, how to see what's really going on. What someone like you with this experience, what?
It's a really beautiful question. I like to pattern myself like the ocean. There's an ebb and there's a flow. There's an ebb and there's a flow. So what happens in the ebb? In the ebb, the ocean is drawing the wave back into itself. So the wave is losing its individual identity. The wave is being drawn back into the collective consciousness. And then from the collective consciousness, once it's immersed in the collective consciousness, then all of a sudden, then the wave flows. And then all of a sudden the individuality starts to express itself. And it crashes on the shore. And then the ocean pulls it back. So what you're talking about is what I have found as an entrepreneur is I have actually begun to realize that the ebbing process of surrendering and going back into the ocean is equally important as the going out process and creating. Think of your starting point. If your starting point is really clear, if your starting point is energized, clear, pure, authentic, then when you move out, all the energy has that to it. But if you're constantly doing, you're missing that. It's kind of like I call it moving deck chairs. There's a lot of people that that I mentor that think they're going to come and I'm going to teach them how to take their company public, or how to raise this fund, or how to do this, or how to improve their their marketing. And I can do all of those things. I do know how to do those things, but it's not as important as, do you know how to surrender to your core? Do you know how to just shut down and retreat into your essence? Really feel who and what you are and what it is that you want to do. And then you go and do it. It's like what Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same energy that created it. You need a fresh perspective. You need to surrender. You need you need to go deep into this surrendered state of being, which is what you're talking about for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need to come to a place where they can surrender to their core. They can surrender to their essence. And from that place, then they can then go out and create. So when I was in the monastery, for 2 years, maybe even it was 3, I meditated on this one passage. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will follow. I just went as deep as I could go. What does that really mean? What does it mean? Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. Well, heaven is your flow state. Heaven is your state where you are completely immersed and connected to the core of who you are, the essence of who you are, the authentic self, the pure authenticity of who it is that you are. That is the most natural state in the world, because it's you. You don't have to create it. You don't have to try to figure it out. You just have to step into it. Be yourself. Allow yourself to be that. That is heaven. Act from heaven. When you feel heaven, then you start to take action. What would heaven look like in form? Form in a company, form in a relationship. What form does that feeling take as it starts to move out from that essence of me? So I know it's a very long answer to your question, but what you're basically saying is, I'm creating a retreat for entrepreneurs so they can find their greatest resource. Their greatest resource is not an investor. It's not outside of them. The greatest resource is being connected to who they are, why they're here, what their essence is, and build that and radiate that so it starts to shine. And then that becomes a magnetic force that will attract everything that it needs to it because it's so pure. And so don't move the deck chair. Allow, if you're going to move the deck chair, make sure it's the right chair to move.
Oh. Okay, I think we have maybe one last question. Greg? Okay, you want one more?
It's kind of a follow-up question
Okay.
to that in terms of
There's kind of two questions here. One is, what's the balance between authenticity and the relevance? If you find something that feels so authentically you, and it's not clear if it is relevant to the audience that you're going after yet, at what point, you speak about flow state, so if you're going for the authenticity and you're trying to find the relevance, how will you know that flow state is, not that it's, you'll know that it's bringing it to you, but what if it's not bringing it to you? How do you course correct?
Flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's the flexibility of allow it to take the form that is relevant. So your authenticity is an energetic that can actually take form in many different shapes. So what form can it take that's relevant to your audience? Because if it's not relevant to your audience, then there's a disconnect, right? Why are they not seeing me? Why are they not understanding my brilliance? Why do they not understand how valuable I am? Because you haven't posed it in a way that's relevant to them. So it's the relevancy dance. It's this is who I am. How can I allow who I am to be relevant to you? So it morphs. It becomes flexible. It changes in each circumstance. So imagine that. Imagine that we're actually beings that have the ability to be present in each moment. And in each moment, we have the opportunity to read the relevancy field of an individual, see what's relevant for them, and actually become that for them. That's the dance. And again, it doesn't matter what it is you're doing. You're building a company. It's the same dance. Be relevant. Be present. That's what I learned by spending 7 years in a monastery before I went into business. I didn't just build up all these ideas in my head and go out and try to make it happen. What I learned was, don't worry about any of that. Just be present. Be present with somebody. Be in their field. Be so aware of what is happening in this moment that you can offer something that's relevant to it. Because you know what else? What else is really going on in this world? We're running around trying to make our shit happen. And you're either helping me or you're in my way. It starts to become this total thing about me. This is what I want, and you want it or you're in my way, kind of thing. And that's what happens to us. We get this idea of who we are and what it is that we're trying to, but what if we're really just servants? We're just here to serve. That's all that we're here to do, is serve. And it's as simple as showing up right now, right here, in this moment, being present, seeing what is present here, and what genius do I have? What ideas do I have? What authentic notion do I have that I can add to this moment that can make it better for you? Just do that, and it will spiral into amazing things. As I said, I built some really large companies, but I built them from that. I didn't build it with an idea of going and building a large company. I built it by being relevant to somebody, and then being relevant to somebody else, and being relevant to somebody else, and being relevant to somebody else. And the more I tuned into relevancy, the more relevant I became, the more successful I became. And you determine, how much relevance do you want? Do you want to be relevant to the whole world, or maybe you don't? Maybe this is your circle that you want to be relevant in. Just be relevant to where you put your attention.
Okay, we have one more last question.
So once before an ayahuasca ceremony, I met an entrepreneur. He was into microorganisms.
Mm-hmm.
So just before the ayahuasca, he said to me that he explained how the microbes work. So in a high line, 5% of the microbes, they are good, 5% are bad, and 90% they need an opportunity. All depends on which one gives this opportunity. If the good one, everything go in fermentation. If the 5% give the opportunity to the 90%, everything go in fermentation. And if the 5% bad creates the opportunity, everything go in putrefaction. So in this journey, in this ayahuasca journey, so I saw money as the opportunity that right now is moving the planet into this putrefaction, right? And in that moment, I was actually great with the crypto and I was wealthy, but I disconnected from this current system because I realized that by accumulating right now, this force, in reality, we are moving the planet into putrefaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to think, how can I move the planet in fermentation? Until I didn't have a family, it was working because I was flowing and I didn't need the money. After I created my family, after I created a new life on Earth, it doesn't work anymore. Now I need the money. So how can I balance this passion, authenticity that I have to create a new system that moves the planet in fermentation, but in the same time provide for my family?
Yeah. Be present. Just serve what is. You know, this notion of accumulation, and that's why I was playing with Prem on this monk to millionaire. It was what he, you know, it's a great line because it has great visuals, you know, around it. But I never really looked at success as money. Well, I never looked at success as accumulation. So accumulation is what happens as a result of an effort. You do something that has a positive impact, and there is an accumulation that occurs from it. And that is what we commonly call wealth. And so we think about our wealth as what we accumulate. But what did Jesus say about that? He said, don't store your treasures where moth and rust corrupts, or where thieves break in and steal. Well, what did he mean by that? Don't store your treasures where moth and rust corrupt, where thieves break in and steal. What he's basically saying is anything that you create like that is subject to those kinds of things. Economies go up and down. People are going to give you you're going to take some bad advice every once in a while. I mean, it's going to, and if you think about your wealth in being that, you're always going to be worried about taking care of that. Well, what if, and this is what happened for me, the big freedom that happened for me in that realm was I recognized that my wealth was not what I was accumulating. My wealth was my connection to the creative process that allowed me to be present, to be relevant enough to offer something to somebody that they valued enough that they would give back to me what I needed to continue to offer it. And that there was this movement in it. That was wealth. And that nobody can ever take from you. And that's what Jesus was saying. He says, somebody can take your money, they can take your things, but they can't take your they can't take the server, the person who serves, the person who perceives what a need is and satisfies it and creates a flow from that. That's heaven. And when I realized that, and I'll tell you, in my situation, because again, I was a pioneer in these mobile telephones, and it was the largest money grab of that decade, and here I was, I walked into it from a monk, and all of a sudden there's just immense amount of wealth being generated, and what I recognized was everybody that I was surrounded by was only interested in the wealth. I was actually fascinated by the device and how it was changing society. I was thinking things like, well, if we have a mobile phone, well, maybe we don't need to be in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning, and maybe every car doesn't need to be on the highway at 8 o'clock because they can get on their phone, or maybe they could be in the, in the forest where they're getting great, oops, there's my bracelet, where they're getting greater inspiration. So these are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. And everybody's only thinking about just grabbing wealth. So I just went, okay, it is what it is. I'm just going to take advantage of it. I'm going to become an incredibly wealthy person. And then at the end of it, I'm going to have the money that I need to go and make the world a better place. Mm-hmm. And I did that for many years. And then the crash of 2008 happened. And I lost almost everything. I mean, he was an incredibly wealthy guy, and I lost it, almost all of it. And it turned out to be the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because that's when I realized that my wealth wasn't what I was accumulating, it was my ability to be present and create relevancy. Nobody could ever take that from me, and all of a sudden I was free. Stop worrying about money. Stop thinking about money, and just all I thought about was just be relevant. Just be relevant. And everything else will flow.
Thank you, Andrew, for making this world a better place. Thank you for coming here tonight to share your wisdom and your passion and your love. And I'm really grateful. I really appreciate you. Rather, please give a huge round of applause for Andrew.